side of him. I think he's still that same Steve. He's still that. But now you're also seeing another side of him that he never had to show.
You're telling people you work with, I don't want you even to be next to me. Like, I have such disdain for you that I'm annoyed by your presence.
His TV talk show.
Okay, this was the one he had on NBC just recently.
Whatever, yeah. The one that damn, who took his show from him?
Kelly Clarkson.
How can Kelly Clarkson take your show?
I heard you go on the air and you said, my sister done burnt too many bridges and there's nothing I can do for her now. Steve, do you know how hurt I was?
Steve Harvey didn't just climb to the top, he stomped over more than a few toes on his way up. At least, that's what an increasing number of comedians are now claiming because the laughter has stopped and the behind-the-scenes truth is finally spilling out.
By the way, this is the same guy who rails against people who don't believe in his particular voodoo.
Right? Against gay people.
Against gay people, against Asians.
According to some of his closest peers in the comedy world, Harvey's rise to stardom wasn't as squeaky clean as the public was led to believe.
You know, my thing with Steve Harvey is that he used my material on both his platforms.
Yeah.
After I talked to him, I saw him at Def Jam, I went up and talked to him, I said, man, you're using my material.
Behind the polished smiles, the sharp suits, and the motivational speeches lies a trail of broken friendships, stolen material, and shady backroom deals that left bitterness lingering in the industry for decades. For years, no one dared to speak up, but that silence has ended, and the story being told now is very different from the picture Steve has been selling all these years. Let's break it down. Steve Harvey is one of the most recognizable names in comedy and television. A man who transformed himself from struggling stand-up performer to global media figure. He went from small clubs and late-night gigs to hosting Family Feud, Miss Universe, The Steve Harvey Show, and dishing out life advice like a preacher on Sunday mornings. He's everywhere. Talk shows, radio, best-selling books, and massively popular podcasts. To millions, Steve embodies the ultimate success story. Proof that perseverance, faith, and hustle can turn a man from nothing into a billion-dollar brand. But hidden behind the applause, the empire has cracks that many say reveal a darker truth about how it was really built. Some of the people who knew Steve Harvey long before the bright lights and massive fame say the man on TV isn't the same person they once shared the grind with.
Bernie said in the GQ article that when he got Ocean's 11, Steve had reached out to the producer and said he thought he would be a better fit and tried to get the part and blah, blah, blah. And the
transformation, they claim, came at a cost. And not everyone who came up alongside him looks back with admiration. Let's rewind to the 1980s and 1990s, the golden era of stand-up comedy.
Comedians don't appreciate their jokes being stolen, and Steve Harvey has rubbed several comedians the wrong way. Well, it looks like Harvey has found himself in some trouble.
No Halloween costume. I think we UPS, I guess. I don't know.
You've heard me say that every Halloween I had the same outfit on. I just had a brown box. And he just told me to tell everybody I was the UPS man.
My material on his show, so I had a beef on that.
On what show?
When he was on the bullshit talk show he had. And he did all my Halloween material one Halloween.
Says he knows that Steve Harvey stole his Halloween bit because it was a personal story. He was talking about himself growing up.
This cat is hot. Please put your hands together for Cat Williams.
Saying you are not supposed to be at the gas station making life decisions.
Can't even pump gas like you used to no more.
If you put $15 in your tank, you had time to bond with your vehicle. You had time to put the nozzle in and
put the nozzle in there and hit it.
Set the clicker and look through your car and clean off the dashboard and
be sitting there talking, be on your phone. Hey, what's happening? Be walking around, cleaning the windshield.
Run in the store and get some Pringles and a Snapper, and it'll still be pumping.
Okay, you go in there, bring me a wine cooler. Bring me a cooler, dog. Not no more.
You can't even turn around good for that son of a bitch click. Just soon as you put it in, just click, click.
Get in there and start it up, and you can't believe that damn needle is a quarter tank of gas.
The same Steve that went to go watch Mark Curry do his whole sitcom and then stole everything Mark Curry had. Now Steve got a sitcom where he the principal and he wear a suit and And then he gets this high top fade, making all black men think he got the best lineup in the business. And it's a man unit. Then you ask him, why you not a movie star? I didn't want to be a movie star. This the same that hated on Bernie with this same thing. I didn't want to be a movie star. No, you couldn't be a movie star. There are 30,000 new scripts in Hollywood every year. Not one of them asks for a country bumpkin black dude that can't talk good, baby, and look like Mr. Potato Head. There ain't none. You would have to have range. I played a lot of characters, 60 movie roles. I'm not playing Cat Williams in there.
Back then, Steve Harvey was just another hungry performer hustling to make a name for himself on stage. He was undeniably funny, quick with a punchline, and fiercely ambitious. But so were hundreds of other black comedians chasing the same dream, grinding on the same circuit, from packed comedy clubs in Chicago to underground open mics in Atlanta.
We going through something, we'll call each other because we feel for each other because we know the real person.
Right. Yeah.
I know they lying about you online. I know that podcast is bullshit. Hang in there, dog. Don't pay no attention to that.
Yeah.
Because, and look, man, just because you can talk smooth without saying, it don't mean you ain't lying.
Right.
I be sitting up here looking at these podcasts of these other comedians that's going on talking about other comedians. Hold up, dog. Where did that shit come from? When did we become that? When did we get into tear each other down business? Because you ain't never heard me say not a disparaging remark against another comedian nowhere. You ain't heard him, or him. Because we ain't cut from that cloth.
Right.
So what is your motive for doing this here? And you're not going to tear him down. And look, man, I got a real platform.
Names like Mark Curry, D.L. Hewley, Cat Williams, Monique, Cedric the Entertainer, and Bernie Mac were all out there doing the same work, paying dues, crafting material, and building their reputations one laugh at a time. Everyone respected the hustle, but they also respected the unspoken code of comedy. And there's one rule you never break. You don't steal another comedian's material. Ever. That's where the controversy around Steve Harvey begins. Because it's not just one person accusing him, it's a pattern that has shadowed his career for decades. One of the loudest voices calling him out is comedian Mark Curry, best known for the hit 90s sitcom Hangin' with Mr. Cooper. Mark's been in the game just as long as Steve, and in a resurfaced interview, he didn't mince words. He said flat out, "Steve Harvey stole my whole routine, he took jokes I wrote, put them on TV, and acted like he made them up." That explosive claim has reignited a larger conversation about Steve's legacy, and whether the comedy empire he built was fueled, at least in part, by material that wasn't his to begin with. For many in the industry, that's a violation that's hard to forgive. This wasn't just some casual accusation thrown out for attention. Mark Curry claimed he saw it happen with his own eyes. According to him, when the Steve Harvey Show first hit television, he immediately recognized certain scenes, setups, and punchlines, and they were, in his words, word for word, the same material he had written and performed. And Mark isn't alone. Over the years, many lesser-known comedians, those who once opened for Steve or worked alongside him, have quietly whispered similar stories. They allege that he had a habit of lifting jokes, polishing them, and then repackaging them as his own on bigger stages. Most were too afraid to speak publicly, worried about burning bridges or jeopardizing their careers. But Mark decided he had nothing to lose and finally said it loud enough for the world to listen. "It's one thing to be inspired by somebody," Mark said, "but when you steal a man's act, that's robbery." That statement hit the industry hard, because for comedians, originality is everything, and being labeled a thief is one of the most damaging accusations you can face. To make matters worse, when Mark initially tried to expose what happened, few were willing to believe him. By then, Steve Harvey wasn't just another stand-up comic, he was a media empire. The sharp suits, the bright smile, the TV shows, radio programs, and books had made him untouchable, and many weren't willing to challenge someone with that level of influence. But Mark wasn't the only comedian ready to speak up. A few years later, Cat Williams took aim at Steve with some of the harshest criticism yet. In a now infamous interview, he declared, "Steve Harvey ain't the king of comedy. He's the king of stealing jokes." That statement cut deeper than most because Cat wasn't just calling out theft. He was calling out betrayal. For Kat and many others, Steve's alleged behavior wasn't simply about jokes. It was about loyalty, integrity, and respect, values that once bonded comedians like Bernie Mac, Cedric the Entertainer, D.L. Hewley, and Steve himself. And according to critics, those values were exactly what Steve was willing to sacrifice in his rise to the top. All four of them, Steve Harvey, Bernie Mac, Cedric the Entertainer, and D.L. Hewley, starred in the original Kings of Comedy, a groundbreaking film that forever changed the landscape for Black comedians. It was meant to symbolize unity, four brothers lifting each other up, celebrating the culture, and shining together on one stage. But after Bernie Mac's passing, that brotherhood began to fracture. Rumors swirled that Steve had used Bernie's death as an opportunity to elevate his own career, stepping into the King spotlight and claiming it all for himself. Cat Williams didn't mince words about it. He said, "Bernie was the people's champ. Steve was the TV champ. But Bernie never sold out. That's why the people loved him more." Those words resonated with fans, and many began digging through old interviews with a more critical eye. Suddenly, moments that once seemed harmless started to feel different. Like the time Steve appeared on Oprah and spoke about Bernie Mac's success with a tone some interpreted as jealousy, or when he told D.L. Hewley, "Some people ain't meant to be stars like me." With hindsight, those moments now carry more weight, especially when multiple comedians, including Kat, Mark Curry, and Monique, all tell similar stories. The more they spoke, the harder it became to ignore the narrative that Steve Harvey's success might not have been built solely on talent and hard work, but also on stepping over those who helped him climb. Even D.L. Hewley, one of Steve's longest-running friends and collaborators, hasn't always seen eye to eye with him. On a recent podcast, D.L. offered a pointed observation. Steve knows how to survive in any room, but that don't mean everybody likes the way he do it. He was referring to Steve's chameleon-like ability to adapt, to say one thing to the streets and something completely different to Hollywood executives. This dual nature, knowing how to charm corporate boardrooms while still appealing to everyday audiences, is exactly what other comedians say makes Steve dangerous. It's the reason he's been able to dominate television, radio, and business for so long. But it's also why so many of his peers believe his legacy is more complicated than the smiling image he presents to the world. Because behind that polished persona lies a man who, according to many, mastered the art of playing both sides, even if it meant leaving others behind. The world of comedy has always been built on authenticity. Real recognizes real. But Hollywood is a completely different battlefield. In that arena, survival is everything, and Steve Harvey learned that lesson early. To make it to the top, you sometimes have to make ruthless choices, even if it means breaking a few hearts or burning a few bridges along the way. According to one comedian who worked with Steve during his early grind, Harvey had a reputation for smiling in your face, laughing with you backstage, and then turning around the next day to meet with your agent, pitching your jokes as if they were his own. That cutthroat mentality, many say, is how he managed to transition from tiny comedy clubs to primetime television, from warm-up acts to headlining shows. But it's also why, as Steve's fame skyrocketed, his circle of friends within the comedy world began to shrink. The most public example of that divide was his fallout with Monique, one of the most dramatic riffs in modern comedy history. When Monique began speaking openly about being blackballed in Hollywood for refusing to play by the industry's rules, Steve was among the first to challenge her publicly. During a now viral interview, he told her bluntly, "You can't sacrifice money for integrity. This is the money game." That single sentence exposed exactly how Steve views the entertainment business, not as a space driven by loyalty or principles, but as a game of power and profit. For Monique, it was a painful betrayal. She saw Steve as a peer, a fellow comedian, and someone who had once understood the struggle. But that moment made it clear he wasn't standing beside her. He was standing behind the very system that had pushed her out. Fans quickly began connecting the dots. If Steve was willing to turn on Monique live on television, they wondered, how many others had he turned on behind closed doors? And the most surprising part? Steve himself has admitted that his rise to success wasn't always honorable. In one of his older interviews, he confessed, "I've done things I ain't proud of, but when you're hungry, you eat what's in front of you." That statement, while brutally honest, also explains a lot. It reveals the mindset that drove his decisions, a mindset where survival eclipses loyalty, where ambition overshadows integrity. And it's exactly why so many comedians now question whether Steve Harvey's empire was built on hustle alone or on the sacrifices of those he left behind. At first, Steve Harvey's comment about eating what's in front of you sounded like a metaphor until people who knew him personally started speaking out. To them, it wasn't just a figure of speech. It was a brutally honest reflection of who he was: hungry, ambitious, and relentless to the point of recklessness. He was the kind of man who craved success so intensely that he didn't care who he stepped over to reach it. But the thing about climbing higher is that people never forget the steps you took to get there. And now, years later, that past is starting to catch up. Old clips are resurfacing, comedians are sharing untold stories, and cracks are beginning to show in the once perfect image Steve worked so hard to present. It's no longer just about stolen jokes or shady business moves. It's about how fame can fundamentally change a person. This is the same Steve who built a career preaching about faith, family, and integrity, yet was publicly accused of cheating on his wife and rebuilding his empire with Hollywood money. The same man who talks about loyalty and community, but who allegedly made deals that left his peers behind. Even some of his former radio team members have spoken out, claiming they felt discarded and replaced once Steve's fame exploded. According to them, Steve doesn't keep friends, he keeps opportunities. That's a harsh statement, but many in the industry believe it sums up how he operates. And yet, despite every allegation, every controversy, and every accusation thrown his way, Steve Harvey keeps winning. No matter what stories surface or who speaks against him, he continues to smile for the cameras, offer prayers on stage, and collect massive checks. Family Feud ratings are breaking records. His books sell millions of copies. His motivational speeches rack up viral views every single week. It's almost as if none of the criticism can touch him. The hate seems to slide right off, and his empire only grows stronger. But that unstoppable momentum is exactly what makes his story so polarizing. Because while some see a self-made success story, others see a man who built his kingdom on loyalty betrayed, friendships broken, and opportunities taken from those around him. And as more people speak out, the question isn't whether Steve will keep winning. It's how much of his past will follow him as he does. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real secret to Steve Harvey's success. He understands the undeniable power of image. He once said, "If people believe you're blessed, they'll forget what you did to get there." And looking at the empire he's built, it's hard to argue that he was wrong. Perception, more than anything else, has been his greatest weapon. But it raises a deeper question. Can someone truly build an empire on questionable decisions and still sleep peacefully at night? Because despite his monumental success, Steve remains one of the most heavily criticized figures in the entertainment industry. Each year brings a new controversy, a new headline, or another former friend stepping forward to say, "That's not the man you think he is." From the fallout following Bernie Mac's death to the bitter feud with Monique, to Cat Williams' relentless public jabs, Steve's name always seems to surface whenever the conversation turns to Hollywood power players accused of ruthless ambition. At the heart of it, Steve Harvey might embody an uncomfortable truth about success, that sometimes talent alone isn't enough. In the cutthroat world of entertainment, it often takes more than jokes, charm, or even talent to stay on top. You have to be ruthless. You have to be strategic. You have to smile while you take what's yours, and hope no one catches you doing it. In this business, the funniest person doesn't always win. The most brilliant strategist does, and Steve Harvey has proven time and time again that he is one of the sharpest players the comedy world has ever seen. He's navigated scandals, outlasted critics, and kept himself in positions of power even as his reputation took hit after hit. But as D.L. Hewley once pointed out, just because you made it doesn't mean everybody clapping is happy for you. And that might be the ultimate lesson of Steve Harvey's career, that success doesn't erase resentment, power doesn't erase enemies, and an empire built on controversy will always cast a long shadow. Yet despite it all, Steve continues to stand tall, a reminder that in entertainment, the smartest player often wins the game, even if the audience never sees the full playbook. So maybe Steve Harvey's rise to stardom was nothing short of legendary. A climb from small clubs and empty pockets to global fame and generational wealth. But that journey came with a heavy cost. Along the way, there were friendships left behind, trust betrayed, and respect shattered beyond repair. And now, as comedians continue stepping forward with their stories, one voice after another, it's forcing everyone watching to ask the real question. Did Steve Harvey build his success from scratch, or did he borrow pieces of it from those around him? Either way, the truth is no longer buried in whispers. It's out in the open for the world to see. And while Steve is busy writing the next chapter of his billion-dollar empire, the people who helped shape the early pages are finally getting a chance to share theirs. What's emerging is a portrait of fame that's far more complicated than the smiling TV host would ever admit, one that blends brilliance with betrayal and ambition with accusation. Because comedy might thrive on perfect timing, but karma always shows up right on schedule. And now, the silence that once surrounded Steve's story is beginning to speak louder than any punchline he's ever delivered. So what's your take on it all? Did Steve Harvey truly climb to the top by scheming, stealing, and stepping on others? Or are bitter rivals simply trying to tear down a powerhouse they could never compete with? Either way, the laughter that built his name might now be overshadowed by the noise of the truth. This is the crossroads where fame collides with receipts, and legends are forced to face reality. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments below, because there's still so much more Hollywood doesn't want you to know. See you in the next video.